Hello, this is Dr. Dave Mastak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk about features for academic culture for PhDs and potential doctorates. So, if you don't know, I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I'm actually in the Chicago airport right now. So, that's why the scenery is a little bit different, the lighting's a little bit poor. But I thought that this was really important to talk about the sort of academic culture that you might see within any particular institution. So, in terms of academic culture, what do I mean by that? So, it's a system of beliefs and values that academics will honor. So, in academics, I'm talking about PhDs and professors and graduate students, just all part of this academic culture or academics in general, very loosely defined. But there is a lot of things that you should know, and I'm just coming home after our largest. So again, a professor of business, and it's our largest academic conference that there is, and it was currently in Chicago. It's 2018. And it's something that I wanted to talk about because I think it's important to talk about this academic culture because you don't necessarily see it. It's a hidden thing that is very much real, and it should be something that should be discussed pretty openly. That's really what all of this whole YouTube channel is all about. So, how does it actually vary? So, I think that there's two ways academic culture varies, or just sort of briefly get into them. So the first one is that each institution that you're at has its own academic culture, right? So there's different things that people might talk about. um, some institutions will have what is called a open door policy, and some might have a closed door policy. So an open door policy is generally there will be professors that will always be around. Their door is kind of, cracked open because they're busy doing work, but it's expected or it's okay to actually walk into somebody's office without going through too much of a hurdle to actually contact those particular people, right? But then others will have this closed door policy where might have to go in and schedule an appointment, and it might be this sort of rigorous affair in terms of finding certain people. And there will be others that will have sort of real formalities, right? So you call professors by Professor so and so versus somebody else. If you're in graduate school and another institution, you maybe just call them by their first name, right? That's totally the norm. At the institution I'm at, it's a little bit more formal because I think it's actually sort of got sort of Southern charm. People do address professors by, Professor so and so. I personally don't like it, but it's just part of what happens it really is just Southern charm, I think. There is also very much differences when within what I'm going to call the academy as a whole, or sort of the college as a whole. So this is not just talking about the specific institution that you're at or specific school that you're at. It's talking about the sort of culture that is the norm within your field. So, for example, there might be different views or how they are, different sort of classes can almost evolve within the academic culture depending on, what kind of institution you're at. For example, there might be sort of one kind of PhD that is in, maybe they're in private schools or something along those lines, right? Like it's not necessarily all that clear to observe those particular effects, but there definitely is implicit cultural norms in how people interact between institutions, or, in terms of what is called, and it's often it is referred to just like in the working world. In a normal working world, there's what's called lateral moves, and these would be sort of peer institutions, and you can move and sort of be comfortable within those peer institutions. But then there's also vertical moves, right? So different institutions, and I'm leaving it up to you to decide who they are and where, what they're all about. You just have to discover yourself. But there's vertical sort of mobility that you might have, and you can go up or down in terms of the institutions that you have. And there's very much this kind of order. It's very implicit. You don't observe any of those particular effects, but it's there. And now, why does this actually exist? Why are these sort of cultural norms and values and things like that that exist. Well, you can imagine the analogy that I like to give is that academia is pretty much a battleground for ideas and ideologies, right? And you're trying to win people over onto your side. You can imagine it's a big game of Risk, for example, or some sort of game like that where you're battling for different resources. The problem is in Risk, I don't know if you've ever played that game before, that board game Risk. The all of the rules and everything is all very, very explicit. But when you're battling for ideas in academia, no clear definition about what is a good idea and what is a bad idea, right? It's not never clear. Although, people recognize what is a good idea or what is really, somebody that is a good academic or somebody that's just doing good science versus somebody that is, going through the motions and stuff like that. It's very, very much, you do see that, but it's hard to sort of identify those particular things and put your finger on those particular things. Not to say you can't, and I'm sure that there's people out there that study all this kind of stuff and be very clear about it, but, there's definitely, so there's this sociology of science, and there's a huge literature within sociology about sort of status moves in your status position, particularly within, the academic community, for example. That might be, so it's called there's old literature, it's called the Matthew effect, and that's really what the whole idea is about is, how can people actually, or what is the position you are relative within your academic standing and who defers to your particular ideas. It's a really important concept to understand that particular thing. So if more people defer to your particular ideas, then you have a higher status. And there's all sorts of metrics the way that people measure that. For example, one of the common one is how many citations you have on your particular articles, and who's citing who, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you know that, but that's a really important thing that people look at is how many citations you have, or who is the sort of centrality of the citation network that you have. Are there people that are higher status institutions actually deferring to your work? But anyways, the whole idea is to sort of come across and understand, how are people actually battling for these particular ideas about, these implicit beliefs and norms within the particular academy. So it's a really sort of complicated, implicit thing that you should be just well aware of, and it depends on, each institution, as I pointed out, has these kind of things, and within the institution, there's people of higher status, right? So generally, general rule of thought, full professors, very high status in a university, and even within full professors, there's statuses between, is this person like an ultra chaired deluxe, privately endowed professor, or just a full professor. There's all these kind of sort of breakdowns, and are you a professor at university so and so that everybody recognizes, or another one that's at such and such over here. There's all these sort of things to look at and think about, and it very much is different, and there is these implicit sort of rules that you're not never aware of when you start the academic thing, but you do become aware of them over time. And now, how do you actually handle some of this academic culture? What should you do? I think the first thing, and this has been a good rule of thumb, and I've learned especially this so when in doubt about who people are, always treat them with a tremendous amount of respect and reverence. So I have come to understand that a lot of people that you're like, oh, they're not such and such, or they're not so and so. I haven't heard of them, but you know what? You get to recognize after the fact. You're like, oh my God, this is an amazing person. They're well connected. They have different resources, all this kind of stuff. Where they're just wonderful people. And it's often not clear at the get-go, and you can't see that stuff until you've actually been around and done the whole academic thing for a long time. And I still am like, oh my God, like I was just talking to blah, 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 maybe it's a potential Nobel laureate or something like that. You don't know when you are doing that. And it's a really kind of fun experience, but again, it's all because these ideas are kind of implicit, and you don't really observe those particular things until you've been around, or you sort of interacted with them, and you understand that they're very, very sharp people. And the second thing is, so often, in particularly at things, these large academic conferences or whatever, often you might be put in a position where somebody might treat you poorly for whatever reason. And this didn't happen to me at this academic conference, but it's happened to me in the past. And you just kind of have to disregard those particular actions and realize there might be other things that are going on behind the scenes, right? So it could be that maybe that they are really nervous. I mean, that's obviously a thing to think about. Or B, some people are very resource strapped at some of these things, and they're rushing from one thing to the next and one thing to the next. And generally, the more that you actually get involved in academia, that's what's happening. They're trying to prioritize time. It's not necessarily that they are being, it's you in per se. It's just that their schedule is really tight and you can't observe what's going on behind the scenes. So it's really important. And by the way, that's called the fundamental attribution error. If you look it up in psychology, is trying to think about, okay, is it the person or is it something else that's going on behind the scenes that's actually causing these particular effects? So that's the one thing I'd sort of suggest is you should be really well aware of those things. And, first of all, treat others with tremendous amount of respect. You never know who they are or who they know. And then second of all, if somebody treats you with disrespect, just disregard it. And I almost guarantee the second, third, fourth time you actually see them, the relationship is going to develop and it's going to get a lot better than that particular first time. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this. Hopefully you enjoyed this. So what I did is I covered, why does academic culture vary? What is academic culture? Why does it actually vary? And what are the particular things that are driving behind that? And some tips to deal with some of these particular issues going forward. So hopefully you like this video. Give me a thumbs up if you appreciate it, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care. Bye.